All right, we pulled off this Thursday edition of the SportsMax Zone with cricket. Barbadian commentator Andrew Mason broke news this week that Cricket West Indies conducted psychometric interviews with 6 players for captaincy of the regional test side. Among the 6 are 2 inactive players, Roston Chase, who last played a test in 2023, and John Campbell, who recently returned from serving a ban for refusing a doping test. Tevin Imlach, who captains regional 4-day champions Guyana Harpy Eagles, is also reported to have been interviewed, along with teammates Jamel Warrican, Justin Graves and Joshua De Silva. A second round of interviews is reported to be conducted in short order, after which the successful candidate will be announced. Now, our team did try to reach Cricket West Indies officials for confirmation. However, we were told that no information on the process has been made public. Well, that's the reason we've now turned to our captain, Fazir Mohammed, as we delve into this discussion. Faz, it's a pleasure to have you on the SportsMax Zone. As usual, good afternoon, welcome. I think it's been a while. How are you, Faz?
Not too bad at all. Good to be back on the show.
Yeah, what do you make of this? Cricket West Indies interviewing all of 6 players for the post of captaincy. I see a number of individuals up in arms. They can't believe some of the names on the list. There are others who are saying, well, this is just too many, that CWI doesn't seem to have a clear direction on this matter. What are your thoughts?
Well, if it's true, and Andrew generally gets it right. He does have his ears to the ground. He's generally quite aware of what's going on, the inner workings of Western Australia. Sometimes even before some of the directors know what's going on, he tends to get that information. So let's go with that. Let's say it is accurate. It is. I mean, it is farcical. Psychometric tests and whatever else. Why not do lie detector tests as well? I mean, come on. I fully understand processes, but again, there has to be common sense attached to it. In sport, and when you're talking about captaincy, there are certain variables that have nothing to do with psychometric this or whatever that, and so on. It's about an understanding of the individual, his awareness of the game, seeing him. In this case, we're talking about the men's game, seeing him in action, coping with stress situations and so on. And then you've got others who clearly can't be seriously considered. I mean, are you going to say that if all the data comes up trumps for Justin Graves or John Campbell or Jamel Warrican, that either one of them is going to be the next West Indies Test match captain? I mean, let's just be real. This is about optics. Well, maybe not, because it's not been made public. But you really struggle to understand what is the sense behind this if you're going to actually interview 6 players for posts that some of them clearly don't even qualify for in a cricketing sense.
Faz, could it be a situation that this is an extraordinary circumstance? I don't know that in the history of West Indies cricket we have been at a stage where we can't clearly pinpoint deserving candidates for the role of captaincy. And so given the extraordinary situation, that it might just require a completely different way of thinking and maybe even doing things.
Well, let's just go back 11 years to the fiasco in India when the prominent players who would have been all obvious candidates for the role of captain were jettisoned, and it became a guessing game. And they went to Jason Holder. There was none of this process. So again, I take your point, but this situation certainly is not unprecedented. We've had situations before. Floyd Reefer, brought in from the cold to be captain of a team against Bangladesh in 2009, when all the first choice players were unavailable because of another labor dispute with Cricket West Indies. So again, this sounds like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, because at any way you look at it, whoever is captain, the feeling generally is, unless we see a Brisbane type shocker, that Australia are going to wipe the floor with the West Indies for those 3 test matches end of June into July. So really, what is this about? If it is true that these 6 players have been interviewed, psychometric testing, fingerprints, and whatever else it is. This is not an unprecedented situation in West Indies cricket, to cut a long story short.
Yeah, Faz, can you find any parallels with this situation and let's say 2010, when Darren Sammy was then inserted as West Indies captain for all formats of the game, replacing Christopher Henry Gale at the time, who had fallen out of favour with the board over contractual issues and so on?
It's a situation not entirely dissimilar, but you had a situation where it was obvious. The board wanted someone, as they invariably do. They want someone who they can work with, which is a polite way of saying they want someone who's polite. That's why they went with Jason Holder, who eventually took some time to find his own feet and was much more forthright with his opinions. Darren Sammy became Test match captain, which basically ended the Test match career of Dwayne Bravo, because you couldn't have 2 all-rounders in a generally weak team anyway, and therefore that was the situation. So I think that in each case, each circumstance over the years, over the decades in West Indies cricket, when there's a search for a captain, there are always slightly different circumstances. This one, it's a similar situation as a few years ago, where we're wondering who we go put, to use the colloquial term, as we often find in political language throughout the Caribbean. Who are you going to put? Well, in this situation, I don't know that this process, if it is true, with all that was revealed by Andrew, really makes any difference to the final situation of choosing the best person for the job.
Yeah, first, can I ask you this, though? Because a lot of serious cricket people, journalists in particular throughout the region, have been a little bit uncomfortable with the level of communication the CWI's current administrators with information. Do you think that this is the kind of information that, if it is true, they should have a difficulty presenting as accurate? Because, as we said, we spent a lot of time today trying to verify this story, and we have a feeling that it is true, given, you know, Mason's background and so on, and his contacts. But in your mind, could you think of a reason why the CWI would hesitate to put this story out there if it is true?
Yeah, because it doesn't make a lot of sense, Lance. Which is why they probably want to keep it quiet. But you're right. As far as communication, I mean, not just this particular administration. Generally, I don't know a time when you could say that Cricket West Indies, West Indies Cricket Board, West Indies Cricket Board of Control, whatever name it had, whatever label, would have been complimented for their forthright and their forthrightness and willingness to communicate. So in this case, if it has to leak out, and obviously someone wants somebody in the public to know, in the general public to know what's going on, you can understand in this case, certainly from my opinion, why you'd want to keep it quiet. Because, as I said again, some of these players, no discredit to them as far as their aspirations to play for the West Indies and so on. But can you seriously say that a John Campbell, a Justin Graves, a Jomel Warrican are seriously in the mix for consideration to be a West Indies Test match captain?
Well, having said that then, Faz, there has to be a process to select the captain. So are you comfortable then with the other 3 names that you have not mentioned just now?
Yeah, I am. And I even thought Shai Hope might have gotten a look in as well, even though, again, I would not have gone that way. But I could understand if you want to look at the way of Shai Hope, who's the captain of the team now in both white ball formats. So I have no issue with those others mentioned. But again, I understand the point that people might be saying about process. But it has to be a process that makes sense. Because in choosing a captain, I don't know that all these variables that we're hearing about necessarily matter at all. It's about the individual's ability to lead, and to lead in a difficult situation, and to inspire players, and to basically show that mettle on the job. I don't know that you could select someone as a captain on the basis of saying, well, he topped the list. He topped the list in all our theoretical testing. He's never captain. We've never seen him captain on the field. We don't know what he could do. We've never seen him in a pressure situation, but he's topped the theory. So let's give him the job. I don't know anywhere in the world people would go with like that, with a situation like that in any sport.
So if you had the job of picking the West Indies captain then, Faz, who would be your top two and who would you give the job? I know we broached this discussion with you before, but given the current, strength of this discussion, I'm putting the question back to you.
Sure, and I'll say exactly what I said a few weeks ago. My top two would be Joshua De Silva, Kevin Imlach. The reason I would go with De Silva is because I think that even though he was dropped from the previous two test matches, he was vice captain. He was someone who was clearly being seen as leadership material. He lost his place to Tevin Imlach, and credit to Tevin Imlach because he was virtually flawless behind the stumps in those two test matches. He led the Guyana Harper Eagles to a regional first-class title, notwithstanding the stain of the ball tampering allegations, which I now understand is a matter for the courts in Guyana. But given his greater experience at the highest level of the game, that's why I'll go with Joshua De Silva ahead of Tevin Imlach. And the reasons for that those choices haven't changed since we last spoke about this about a month ago.
Yeah, I understand Ricardo's point, though, Faz, about the dearth of quality candidates here for this job. And it is a difficult situation to select a captain, given what we have on the table at the moment. I remember when Clive Lloyd took over as the West Indies captain, Faz, and I know your astute historian side of your work will address this. I don't know that Clive at that point had, proven himself beyond any shadow of doubt that he could be a good West Indies captain, but he was seen as someone who had displayed the kind of quality that could lead this fledgling West Indies team, and he turned out to be, in many ways, the most successful captain in the history of West Indies cricket. Can you talk about your impressions of that decision back in the mid-1970s to make Lloyd captain?
Very different time because, again, Lloyd in 1974, when the decision was made that Rohan Kanhai would be replaced, had been a test match cricketer for 8 years. He had started in 1966-67 in India and was very successful. He had an issue with the administration, as so many players tend to do, in 1973, where he was playing great cricket in Australia. And it was the Guyanese Prime Minister or President Forbes Burnham who negotiated his release from that contract. He came back to the West Indies, had missed the first couple of test matches, the first test match, played the second and third, scored 178 at border in Georgetown, and was therefore a fixture back in the West Indies team. But also, Lance, he was well entrenched with Lancashire in the English County Championship, was playing for Guyana. So he was certainly way ahead as far as credentials for leadership, even if he didn't have a huge amount of actual leadership experience at the time. But which is a huge amount of difference.
Yeah, which is why I asked you the question, Faz, because I know he didn't have proven acumen as a captain when he was given the West Indies captaincy, and he has become the West Indies' most celebrated captain, given what he did with the team and building the team into an unbeatable unit. I agree with you that this is a completely different time. He was put in charge of a group of players who were, without question, world-class, pretty much all of them, which is not the case now. But I just want to go there because I'm thinking that maybe there is something in some of these players that could come out if given the captaincy job, even though they haven't had the shown proven skills as a captain, as Lloyd had not when he was given the job.
I hear you on that, but I think at the time, I don't think there was too much debate as to who would be the successor to Rohan Kanhai. it would have to be Clive Lloyd. If you look at not just seniority, but experience, the respect of players being able to build a team, mold a team. Yes, they're world-class names, of course, a few years after, but at the time, Viv Richards had yet to play a test match. Gordon Greenwich had yet to play a test match. Many of them were just in their first year of test cricket. Andy Roberts had just one test match to his name. But you're right, it was obvious that this was world-class talent. But unlike now, where we're fishing around for someone who could say to be an automatic alternative, in the case then, I don't think there was too much of a discussion that Clive Lloyd, with that experience of almost a decade as a test match cricketer, was the obvious successor to a Rohan Kanai.
All right, Faz, we're going to leave it there. After the break, we will continue to discuss cricket with you because something happened in India today that we think deserves some spotlight on the SportsMax Zone. So stand by as we get into that discussion after the break. Yeah, before we go to the break, Ricardo, interesting comments there made by Faz. Obviously not agreeing with how you feel about the issue, but I see both sides of it. But I kind of understand Faz's point because the list seems fairly wide to me, and there are names there that I have to agree with Faz. I'd be hard pressed to consider them.
Yeah, but that's because I believe a lot of individuals, Lance, are looking at this issue at face value. Now, because of the situation that we find ourselves in, as I pointed out at the top of the show, there has to be a different type of thinking in selecting the next West Indies captain. Now, one of the things, if it is that you are looking at a short list, you cannot look at a short list where essentially the strengths are the same of all 6 individuals. So my suspicion is that whoever came up with this and whoever came up with this short list is looking at each individual and probably saying each of these individuals come with something different, come with an asset or a set of assets that we feel will be beneficial. When we go through the process, then we will come to a final decision. It doesn't mean that Jamel Warrican is going to become the next West Indies captain. It could well be that after the first stage that he is eliminated. It doesn't mean that Roston Chase will become the next West Indies captain. It doesn't mean that John Campbell will become the next West Indies captain. But throughout the process, there are things that they clearly have that warrant a discussion and warrant bringing them into a room and say, let us have a conversation about what you could bring to the table as West Indies captain. Now, personally, I don't have an issue with that. Now, part of the reason as well I asked Faz the question about when Darren Sammy was named the captain is because I think there are a few similarities here. Let's not forget, Darren Sammy had played something like 8 test matches over a period of 6 years when he became West Indies captain. And he became West Indies captain at a time when it was felt not that he was the best player, not that he would command automatically a spot in the team, because if you remember clearly in 2010 when he became captain, one of the major talking points was he shouldn't be captain because there's no way he can command a place in the team. But what was needed at the time was a captain, was a leader who could bring the unit together. And yes, the test performances did not significantly improve. But where we had world-class players, which was in the T20 format, there was success, and there was a lot of success under his guidance. Now, I know we're running out of time, so just to make the point quickly, part of the thing here in trying to select the next West Indies captain is that you have to strike a delicate balance between an individual who you see as one who has a long-term future in the West Indies team and one who is good enough to be in the team now and has the strengths of being a leader. So meaning players like Alec Athanaze or Amir Django, Shamar Joseph, Jaden Seals are all players who you could say, well, maybe with the exception of Django, could are among the leading players in commanding their place consistently in the final 11. But you wouldn't give captaincy to any of those because you don't want to destroy careers that have great potential. And so you're looking at for that individual, at least in my opinion, who is almost on the edge. Yes, they can make the team. Yes, they have the potential or have shown that they are quality leaders. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to play for the next 5, 6, 7 years, but maybe they are the ones to bring us through the next 2 years, maybe even the next year and a half as we reassess how we're going to go forward beyond that. And that's part of the reason why I don't have a significant issue with what has been reported and what has been put in front of us.
I hear you.
I know you hear me, Lance. Can we go to break now?
Yes, we can.
All right.